I wonder if putting people to sleep with this video is actually a good thing. Alright, so as you can see, I'm not currently in my shop. I'm actually in Chicago right now, hanging out with Mike Clifford from Modustrial Maker, and I'm in his basement workshop. This week we have been working on some cool concrete projects, and last week I was actually down with Chris Salamone from Four Eyes Furniture, working on a cool piece of furniture with him. So be sure to check out their channels in the next couple weeks, as they should have some videos coming out with this goofy face in them. I will put links to both of their channels in the description. But let's jump into my build, which happened back in California before I left.
California, here we come.
So I made a king-size bed frame for the same clients that I made that huge Baltic birch bookcase for. And just like the bookcase, this bed was their design. I was actually matching a queen-size bed frame that they already had. So the first step was to glue up all the panels for the bed frame sides to rough width, and I also glued up 2 boards to make up the beams for the base. Once everything was dry, I needed to plane it down to final thickness, and given the fact that these panels were now too wide for my little Makita planer, and the fact that this entire bed was made from hard rock maple, I needed to come up with some sort of solution. And that solution, of course, was using Jonathan Katz-Moses' gigantic 24-inch wide, I think it's like 12 horsepower planer. Using his planer probably trimmed off at least 50% of the time that it would have taken me to do this same task in my shop, if not more. So thank you, Jonathan. So now with everything to its final thickness, I could then trim all the panels and beams to their final length and width. I did this all on the table saw, and when cross-cutting long parts like this, it can be a little bit tricky, but with a few clamps in the right spots, I was able to make it work just fine. So with everything cut to its final dimension, I could then start working on the joinery. And this bed frame, as with most bed frames, needed to be disassembled fairly easily. So I decided to try out the new Festool Domino connector system. As with most things like this, it takes a minute to figure it all out, but once you get your head wrapped around it, they were really pretty easy to use. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, I'll just kind of let it play out, but I might throw together a more in-depth video on using this system down the line, as they ended up working perfectly for this application. So with the frame connectors finished, I could then shift to cutting the joinery in the beams, and I used an interlocking cross-lap joint for this. I think that's what it's called. And I did this by putting together a couple quick jigs that matched the width of the interlocking part, then used my router and a template cutting bit to cut each dado to its proper depth. The main trick here is that I did all of these with the two matching parts clamped together. That way everything would line up perfectly when assembled.
But the question is whether or not you're perfect for each other.
So with all of the joinery done on the frame, the last fabrication step was to make all of the support slats. These were all made of poplar, and I just ripped a bunch of strips for the slats, as well as the center support and the side pieces that would attach to the bed frame. In order to keep the slats in place, I just cut a domino mortise into the ends of each piece. Then a mortise into the side support piece, and it worked great. I also had to cut one last dado for the center support slat. But after that, I just took the whole thing apart, did some sanding, added some finish, and it was pretty much ready to go.
No.
Alright, so there you go. Hopefully you didn't get tired of watching me build this bed frame. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Pretty simple build, but a really clean design and some cool little details in there. So like I mentioned at the beginning, and as you can see, I'm in Chicago helping Mike out with a couple projects. Actually, here's a little sneak peek. So be on the lookout for those videos on his channel, as well as something on Chris's channel fairly soon. Links to both of their channels are in the description. And as I have been kind of running around a lot lately, and I actually still have a few more stops to make, it has been a little sparse on my channel, but we will be getting back to it fairly soon. Just bear with me, I appreciate it. But as always, thank you for watching. Links to my website, build plans, Patreon, some discount codes, all of that stuff is in the description. And of course, until next time, if you ever get tired of sleeping on the floor, just build yourself a bed frame. What are you doing?